Now to the battle over tariffs. President Trump announcing the 25% tax on goods coming into the U.S. from Canada and Mexico.
In an unprecedented escalation of trade tensions, the Trump administration's tariff strategy has ignited a ripple effect across North America. What began as a dispute over steel and aluminum imports has now evolved into a full-scale trade war, one that is breaching not only borders but power grids, industrial lifelines, and household economies across the continent. On March 4th, the White House issued a sweeping order that effectively doubled tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Mexico and Canada, increasing them to a staggering 50%. It was a bold move aimed at protecting domestic industry, but the fallout has been anything but contained. While the first tremors were felt in factories and auto plants, the latest blow has struck somewhere far more critical: the electric grid. In a stunning retaliatory move, the province of Ontario, Canada, imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States. This action, unprecedented in modern US-Canada relations, has sent shockwaves through American energy regulators from Michigan to New York. The message was clear: if the US insists on using tariffs as leverage, Canada is prepared to hit back where it truly hurts: in the power supply. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford had issued a warning months prior. Should the United States continue targeting Canadian goods with aggressive tariffs, Ontario would strike at a core American vulnerability: electricity. In March, he made good on that warning. The surcharge took effect, and US states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, all of which rely heavily on Canadian hydropower, saw electricity rates spike almost overnight. Ford didn't stop there. In a direct threat, he stated publicly that if the White House escalated tariffs any further, Ontario could consider a complete shutdown of power exports to the United States. That's not just rhetoric. It's a real and looming grid-level threat. More than 1 million American homes and businesses depend on Canadian electricity, and there is no immediate or affordable substitute. And Ontario is not acting alone. In April, Manitoba quietly allowed 2 long-term export contracts to lapse, removing 500 megawatts of hydroelectric power from the US market. The official reasoning: a domestic repatriation of energy. The real motive: strategic leverage. Quebec, too, is now considering similar restrictions. This turn of events has sent US energy regulators scrambling. Organizations like the New York Independent System Operator and New England Grid Managers have begun drafting emergency plans. These regions import 5% to 10% of their power from Canada and depend on cheap, reliable hydroelectricity to stabilize their grids during periods of peak demand. If those imports are cut off, the consequences could be dire: blackouts, emergency fuel switching to oil or liquefied natural gas, and soaring electricity costs. Even Minnesota, less dependent on Canadian imports, is preparing for a worst-case scenario. This is how serious the situation has become. The grid is no longer just infrastructure. It's now a strategic battleground. The origins of this crisis trace back to March 4th, when the Trump administration imposed 25% tariffs on nearly all imports from Canada and Mexico, targeting food, electronics, and essential industrial materials. Canada responded quickly and forcefully, enacting its own tariffs on $30 billion worth of US goods, including consumer staples like orange juice and industrial supplies like lumber. But it was Canada's pivot to energy that truly raised the stakes. On March 12th, after the US doubled tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50%, Canada unleashed retaliatory energy measures. The Ontario electricity surcharge, while seemingly technical, struck at the very heart of American daily life and industrial productivity. Behind the scenes, officials in Washington were reportedly blindsided. Publicly, the administration dismissed the move as provocative. Privately, they knew the truth: if the wires are cut, the lights go out. Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who succeeded Justin Trudeau in late March, is playing what many now see as a high-stakes geopolitical chess match. He has assured Parliament that negotiations with the US are underway, but also warned that full reprisals are being prepared should diplomacy fail. Those reprisals are already taking shape. Canada has filed legal challenges under both the World Trade Organization and the USMCA. And at home, labor unions are urging the government to go further, not just to tax energy exports, but to sever them entirely, including oil, gas, and even critical minerals. Meanwhile, provinces like British Columbia are exploring new fronts in the conflict. Rather than targeting electricity, Premier David Eby has proposed a new fee on U.S. commercial trucks transiting through BC en route to Alaska. The goal: hit Alaska's supply chain and send a political message to Republican strongholds. While Canada has chosen retaliation, Mexico is opting for negotiation for now. President Claudia Sheinbaum has condemned the tariffs, especially the 50% duty on Mexican steel, calling them baseless and harmful to North American unity. Rather than retaliate immediately, her government is negotiating a compromise with the U.S. A potential deal would allow a capped quota of Mexican steel to enter the U.S. at reduced or zero tariffs, with any excess subject to the full 50% duty. This is not free trade, it's managed trade, and it reflects how much leverage Washington currently holds. Still, Mexico is preparing to act. Should talks break down, Sheinbaum has warned of retaliatory tariffs and legal challenges of her own. The consequences of these trade tensions are already being felt across North America. The U.S. auto industry, highly integrated with Canada and Mexico, is facing material cost hikes, production delays, and early rounds of layoffs. Canadian manufacturers are calling for emergency government support. Mexico is drawing up economic stabilization plans, and U.S. workers are bracing for what many now fear is the early phase of a recession. Retailers like Target and Best Buy are raising prices due to increased import costs. Avocados from Mexico now carry a tariff. Electronics from both China and Mexico are being reclassified for higher duties. Economists estimate that the average U.S. household will pay nearly $1,000 more per year due to rising prices across essentials. Market sentiment reflects this pain. In April, the S&P 500 entered correction territory. Consumer confidence has dropped to levels not seen since the inflation crisis of 2022. The Congressional Budget Office now forecasts a 2.8% contraction in U.S. GDP for the first quarter alone. But beyond economics lies a deeper danger: structural instability. Canada's electricity exports are a foundational element of the northeastern U.S. power grid. Without them, the grid could begin to fail, and if Ontario, Manitoba, or Quebec pull the plug during peak demand, the result could be catastrophic: grid overloads, forced blackouts, energy rationing, and widespread economic losses. More alarmingly, Canada is already redirecting some of its energy exports. In April, for the first time ever, Canada shipped more crude oil to China than to the United States. Ottawa no longer sees Washington as a reliable trade partner, and it's acting accordingly. This is no longer just a dispute over tariffs. It is a crisis of trust, diplomacy, and regional stability. The wires that carry electricity across borders have become symbols of a deeper fracture between allies who once shared more than trade agreements, but a vision for shared prosperity. As the trade war deepens, the cost will not be measured only in dollars or trade deficits. It will be measured in blackouts, job losses, and lost trust between nations. And when the lights go out, North America may finally understand the true price of turning commerce into conflict.